Hi Gina.
Hi Ione. Hi everyone. I'm Gina, the senior editor of Polyester.
And I'm Ione, the founding editor-in-chief of Polyester, and this is the Polyester Podcast, a feminist pop culture podcast dissecting the discourse on a weekly basis.
Before we start, we've just relaunched our membership platform to include loads of new perks.
Wow.
Including exclusive podcast-centered ones. We're now offering exclusive video episodes that we're recording today.
Right now, we are in 3D vision, for those who are a member. Well, it's not just 2D, is it? It's not just audio. It's audio visual.
Right, I can't even get into that right now. You'll be able to see from my face trying to work it out in the video. Secret mini episodes, we just recorded one.
We did just record our first one.
And even episodes centered on what you want us to talk about across different tier options. Go check it out at the link in our description. And if you haven't yet, please make sure to like, rate, subscribe, and review. Do we have any reviews, Ione?
We do. This is from...
Yes.
Gina, you didn't put the person's name.
It's there, Apple X.
Doesn't that just... Oh, sorry. I thought that meant that they did it on an Apple phone on X.
No, that's the name.
Sorry, my bad. Apple X, important podcast. I'm so happy these girlies exist. Intellectualizing the topics they talk about is so important. Please never stop, and thank you for creating a community of like-minded individuals with the cry emoji and the angel emoji. And that is by Apple X in the US, which is very kind.
Yeah,
and
thank
nice.
you so much.
And then on Holly on Spotify, this is on last week's episode, said, fantastic episode. I wish everyone could hear it. Love her, love her, love her.
Me too.
Gina.
Well, that's really nice.
And then Lauren Mosley said, should be compulsory listening, tick. Thank you for covering this and as always being passionate and honest, which is very kind and lovely.
Yeah, thank you so much, Laura and Holly and Apple.
So this episode, I'm going to try, I really don't want to be a hater, but I am.
I think we're both haters, so it's fine.
But this is the problem, we always just hate.
Hate. Well, I think there is like a positive side to it.
Yeah, okay, so today we're talking about Adolescence. If you have been living under a rock, you probably will have heard of Adolescence on Netflix. Does it count as the limited series if it's only 4 episodes?
Yeah, I think it's like double time.
And the log line...
What's the log line?
Is a family's world turns upside down when 13-year-old Jamie Miller is arrested for murdering a schoolmate. The charges against their son force them to confront every parent's worst nightmare.
Well, I think that does sum it up quite well.
Yeah.
Whoever wrote that logline, congratulations. You've got hit the nail on the head.
It's taken the world by storm because of its depiction of teenage boy masculinity with regards to the manosphere, Andrew Tate, and how young men are being radicalised towards misogynistic views on the internet.
Yeah. I think that was also a really good summary of what it's about. So it's 4 episodes. They're shot in like real time over different days. So the first one's day 1. So when Jamie gets arrested.
Jamie is the name of the boy.
Yeah, Jamie is the name of the boy. And then day 3. So it's like them the police officers going to the school and like trying to like work out like what's actually happened, like what the motivation was for Jamie doing the crime. The crime is
murdering.
Yeah, trigger warning. Stabbing a girl.
And spoiler warning for this whole episode, I guess.
Well, yes. Precisely. And then episode 3 is 7 months into it. So he's being held in a training centre, which
it's like a psych facility, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, but they call it like the training centre. It's really weird. And he's being held there. And the episode revolves around him being like psychoanalyzed to see if he's fit for trial. And then the next episode...
I don't even know if it's fit for trial. They don't really make that clear.
Oh, I thought they did.
No, because I think they're the lawyers hired her.
Yeah, because they say that he said he's already seen one that's from like the court side.
Oh, okay, fine.
And then this woman's like being hired on behalf of the family as well. Okay. So like they've got like a balance. Balance of it. And then the final episode is 13 months later. He's about to stand trial, and it follows like the family like a day in their life, like how their lives have been changed and shaped by him being like this now being a public case as well.
So it's gone mega big. Mega
viral. It's like kind of like this year's Baby Reindeer, I'd say.
Yeah, which is weird because I swear the timings is the same as well.
Yeah, it feels very like, oh, this is a good slot to get everyone
talking,
yapping about
talking about society.
A British drama that focuses in on something that's like a bit more taboo, I guess, in British society or like our society.
Everyone's been going bananas for it. Keir Starmer has decided he's introducing it to the curriculum to teach people about what, though?
Teach kids about what they already know.
Yeah.
I just seen Tom Usher go on the Politics Joe podcast.
Yeah.
And he was saying, like, it's stupid because this is very clearly aimed at the parents of kids. It's not really aimed for kids to learn anything from. Like, there's literally a huge part of episode 2 where the DI gets taught by his son, like, what, like, the language of, like, incel culture is. In, like, a really crazy scene that we're going to talk about probably. And he's like, it's very blatant from that scene that the audience for this program
is older people
to, like, understand what kids are, like, engaging with online.
There's a good tweet in the research which is to the effect of, like, adolescence is for like lots of people what Nanette was for straight people, in that it's just like teaching people that have never thought about queer issues before about queer issues, and this is the same with incels. I completely forgot what Nanette was. I had to Google it, and I was like, wow, what a time. Hannah Gadsby's, what's it called?
Magnum Opus. Swan song.
That's not what, no.
Swan song.
Stand-up special was what I was looking for.
Well, I think it is probably, like, the thing they're most famous for.
Yeah, for sure.
They're, like, pieces de resistance.
Well, I don't know. Maybe they think they're going to do better in the future.
Well, if they do, I would applaud.
Swan song, isn't that like the last thing you do before you die?
Yeah, sorry, I've got that from the studio TV show, not like being in you.
Anyway, let's go back to Adolescence. But I feel like Adolescence kind of fails in the same way that a lot of media about the manosphere and Andrew Tate fail, in that, and it's kind of what we talked about on the Sam Fender Left Turned On Woke podcast, in that it speaks about the manosphere and being an incel and extreme right-wing views being developed in young boys and boys of all age as this kind of just like nebulous thing that's hard to define, like as in when Sam Fender said like, oh, I can see why boys turn to Andrew Tate, but they're not saying like why Andrew Tate is damaging for boys to turn to. Like, I feel like it's this weird thing where adolescence serves as an educational piece, but it's not actually educating people that much. And I've been grappling with this since we literally just watched it all yesterday, both of us, because we were both like, can't be asked. And then we were like, actually, we'll do the podcast. I've been grappling with this since yesterday, especially since yesterday. Grappling with this.
Wait, when have you been grappling with this?
Since yesterday. And since Keir Starmer said he's going to add it to the curriculum, is just like, oh, it's stupid. Like, at first, my first reaction was, oh, it's stupid that people have to learn about this stuff through a Netflix show. But then equally, it does show the power of like art and entertainment to not teach people, but you know what I mean, like open people's eyes. And I don't want to be like anti-art by being like, oh, all these people don't know about anything until they watch like a Netflix British drama. I feel like it's kind of conflicting because we see Netflix as quite a lowbrow thing. Do you know what I mean? Like, if it was like a HBO show, everyone, like, I wouldn't be like, oh, it's so embarrassing that everyone loves this. That's my own personal bias.
But I think also, like, it's quite easy to be like, if we're just also not the audience for it. Like, I can understand like why my parents would watch it and be like, this isn't something that I took seriously, and it is actually like radicalizing kids. But it's kind of like, but also like that line of thought I also query myself on, because I'm like, well, why isn't it being taken seriously when we get the actual news stories of these like really crazy things happening?
Yeah, and I also think something that we touched on when we were speaking amongst ourselves is like, obviously there is so a huge like part of the show is that the parents didn't realize that Jamie was being radicalized on the internet, or that him and his friends like held these views. I don't think it's made clear that they do hold these views. So this whole thing that's like, basically they kind of figure out that there's something going on with incels because they go on his Instagram and he's posted a photo, and the girl that gets killed has commented being like,
she's commented a dynamite emoji, which they say, and I think it is true, represents like an incel who's been like fully radicalized, like really.
Why do you think it's true?
Because in the research Rob's pulled out with like what that actually means. Yeah,
but then also the research says that kids don't say it's true.
But I don't think kids are actually using it for that. Like, I think it's been misappropriated. So like on Reddit forums and stuff, they use it about each other, because there's like the 80-20 thing is true. Like, that's actually like something that they say.
Yeah.
And I think they do use the emoji for it. It's just that like the way that they've framed it in Adolescence is that people who aren't involved in incel conversations
are being accused of being an incel.
Not just that, but like using that language to bully people who are really like buy into it, like, whereas I think like people who are aware of those like terms and stuff aren't like so deep in it that they know like this emoji is like a signal for that.
Wait, backtrack. I don't understand. My reading of the show was that what's her name? Katie the girl was taking the piss out of the boy,
cyberbullying him
by accusing him of being an incel.
Yeah,
but he never actually cops to having those beliefs or even watching that content.
He doesn't admit it, but I think it's in episode 3 when they have like the therapy scene and he starts being like, yeah, she's flat, but like I can win around because I know that she's going to be weak in that moment. It's
no, that's what I'm saying, but it infers so much knowledge, like it infers so much prior knowledge by the audience to know that like that technique of trying to like pull a girl or whatever when she's like been weakened down, because he's like, oh yeah, she's been weakened, so it'll be easier for her to say yes to me. It takes like quite a bit of prior knowledge to know that a part of like Andrew Tate's thing is pickup artistry, and that like loads of the right-wing boy stuff like centers around being a like pickup artist techniques and stuff. And I don't feel like your mum watching it would necessarily know to conflate the like emoji incel talk with that conversation with the therapist in which he's saying with that just not being something he's thought of in his head to like a whole wider ideology. Like, I think that's kind of where it felt. Maybe I'm just like down on, you know, like media literacy, but I feel like the show does this weird thing where obviously, yeah, like if we watch it, we know those subtexts, so it can be picked up on, but it does this weird thing where it assumes the audience knows nothing, but can also track those like quite subtle nuances of being groomed by right-wing men online. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's right. Like the messaging's really like confused on it, on like how trusting it is of the audience. Like a lot of it is like, I'm just going to explain what this thing is. I'm going to explain what we're doing here. I'm going to explain that like...
No, exactly. It's how, and it made me think, do you remember when it came out that like loads of Netflix notes were that you had to overly explain things on Netflix shows because people were on their phones, so you had to just like hammer it home.
Yeah, have the female sergeant being like, I hate school. They've just put a video on and they're not engaging with it.
No, that was the man that said that.
They both say it.
Do they?
Yeah, at the end when they're walking away. And she's like, and it's also terrible that no one's talking about
the victim.
The female victim.
No, I know. And then I also thought it was equally stupid that, yeah, so when they go into the school, it's, I guess they're trying to make different points about different ways society has failed Jamie, the teenage boy that leads him to the path of killing a girl, which is depressing. And like, obviously it is a problem. And like, we've said this before, but there's just such a, like, I feel like it's not an overcorrection at all, but there's such an onus on like, teenage boys, which is necessary. And I know maybe this is controversial, but I feel like the reason why we have this thing like, oh, only now, it's quite recent that we talk about teenage boys being let down, them being conditioned by Andrew Tate, boys having less prospects. And often, even in this research, they're put side to side with like young girls are outperforming both socially and academically their male counterparts. And also something that I noticed in the show was that basically this girl was being bullied initially, being called flat-chested and stuff. She'd had nudes leaked of her. He'd gone to her house and been like, do you want to go out with me? And she was like, no. And then commented on his picture saying like, you're red-pilled or whatever. But all of the onus of like who's being bullied is on the boy being bullied, not that girl Katie who's had loads of bad things happen to her. And I feel like the only reason we care, and the fact she stuck up for herself is what I mean.
Yeah.
Because like when we were teenagers, for example, I just don't think that girls were as like empowered is maybe the wrong word, but emboldened to stick up for themselves against boys. Like they were just way more likely to take it or whatever. And now girls are kind of hitting back and we're like, we have to look after our boys. And I do think we do have to, by the way. But I think it's like, it feels that the adolescence conversation is hinged on such a timely hook that it fails to acknowledge that young boys, teenagers have always been misogynist and have always sexually assaulted women and have like always done disgusting things to girls. We're going to a break.
Okay, we're back.
Well,
yeah, so what I found really interesting in the research was the pull quotes and the testimonies from people who are like actually in school. So people have interviewed students in the wake of this show, and also teachers. So Adam Miller wrote for Metro an interview with a secondary school teacher who chose to be anonymous, and they're saying like this literally just scratches the surface, which I think was the problem with the show as well. Like it kind of like they go to the school and they're like, wow, they're all sexist, and they're like, we're letting down kids in school, but it doesn't really dig into that. And then it's going like, wow, kids are being radicalized online, but it doesn't really dig into like what's radicalizing them. I think the problem
with why that doesn't show as well is because of the real time the 100%. One shot takes, because like you can't, so much of it is just like empty air. Like I understand wanting to build tension and like
it didn't build tension,
feeling like the weight of the pressure of the situation in real time, blah 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 blah. But I feel like one shot and like one take stuff has just become such a like shortcut for trying to make prestige telly.
Yeah, this is literally an episode of The Studio. Like in the second one, he's like, they're like trying to get the one, and he's just like, you can just cut it though, like that, like little fuck up, and then she's like, no, we can't. And it's just Seth Rogen ruining their one. It's actually really funny. But in this article, to go back to it, the guy's saying like, there's always been a base level of immature misogyny in schools. Like girls are gross and scary creatures who I don't understand. But the way that boys talk about women now is different, but also the way that girls do. So like the way that they react is they've got the language to be like, this is sexual harassment, this is misogynistic. And then the boys' reaction to that is that they're like just distrustful of women because they're like worried that they're going to be called that, because before they didn't get called that. And they're really angry because of the manosphere. And then it's saying that like in like topics like English, when you teach in English, so much of it is discussion based. These boys aren't giving their opinions across, because when they do give their opinions across, all the girls are like, you're being sexist. And then they get labelled as weird. And I thought that was interesting, because before I read that, I was like, oh, the like cyberbullying storyline, like a boy being called like an incel as like an insult, and then it's just kind of felt really tenuous to me when I was watching the TV show. And then when I read this account, I was like, okay, that makes sense. Like women now have the language to call stuff out like way more specifically. Like when boys is like saying something that's like sexual harassment, even like sexual assault, like boys used to just like grope girls in my school like growing up, but it was just kind of like part of like fun and games, which obviously horrific.
And the confidence, I'd say, as well, like girls have more confidence now to be able to, because they have the language and the tools and stuff. And it feels like a weird thing to be like, I don't know, like surely the answer is to not then keep raising the stakes, so then boys feel more emboldened to do this, so then girls have to counter correct that, so then boys feel more emboldened. Like surely, like, yeah, okay, a boy should be a bit embarrassed if he's sexist. Like how many times do like marginalized people, or like especially teenagers, grow up like learning to like self-correct or like conceal certain parts of their identities or whatever to assimilate into the classroom situation or the world? Like boys can do that for a bit, straight boys can do that for a bit.
Yeah, no, honestly, I think that's the thing. It's like that someone in one of the first pieces in the research, I think it's the New York Times or the Guardian, pulled out that Margaret Atwood quote, which is like, boys are scared of like being laughed at and women are scared of being killed. Murdered. Yeah, and I think like that just really sum it up. Like the thing is that these boys are now being like humiliated into extreme acts of violence rather than like extreme like hating themselves or like being scared of themselves, also, or like ashamed of themselves. Like shame has now been spun into something that can be blamed on someone else.
Yeah, 100%. That's
rather
so
than
true.
like being made to feel shame because you've done something that's shameful. It's spun around being like, you've made him feel shame about that, and that's wrong. Whereas like, well, some things you should be ashamed of, and then you should learn from that. Whereas like, there's people like Andrew Tate and like the manosphere that are emboldening these boys to be like, the shame that you feel is the women's fault. But then I think some programming and some of the words around it as well is being like, well, the shame that these boys feel is because, even like this article being like, the shame that these boys feel because they're called weirdos for being sexist. It's like, well, the root of the problem is that they're being sexist.
Also, yeah, and I was on my I was looking at my Facebook memories the other day, and it was all the Formspring, like it was Formspring time that was coming up, and it was like literally people being so nasty to me, and like exactly the same as the show, like saying that like my boobs were flat and far apart and stuff like that. And it's like, not all boys are like this. Do you know what I mean? I feel like there's this what's the word, like fear mongering now that this show's come out, and it is such a widespread problem, and we need to like educate boys from the off. But there's not like an immediate correlation between being a boy and being a piece of shit. Like some kids are just like pieces of shit because of certain environmental and like behavioral reasons. And I think something, and also that needs to be taught out of them, but being like, we should be scared for the lives of every man is like, I think a bit overdramatic. Not overdramatic, but do you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's kind of like what was interesting about Adolescence, was that it wasn't like when the dad's like, I got battered and I'm fine. And then it's like, well, there was kind of like the ignorance of like what your kid's actually up to that was like, and having these conversations that was like the issue here. Like they don't know like what he's looking at online. We're never going to know what kids are looking at online. Like that's just part of the internet existing.
I disagree. I think this is a gap that's going to close like within our generation being kids. But I think this is basically one of the last pieces of media, and we were talking about it earlier, that can rely on the assumption that parents are going to be technophobes. Is that a word?
Yeah, it's a word.
Because I think the parents are too old in the show. Like they're probably in their late 40s or 50s and they have 13-year-old and a 16-year-old or whatever, which is fine. But also my mum's in her late 50s and has been on the internet the same amount of time I have now. So like if she had a 15-year-old now, she would be literate to know. And like my mum, we've already spoken about this, my mum did know what I was doing, but obviously not all parents are, but they will be from like our generation down. Like
I don't think so. I think kids are gonna find a way. Like you're gonna find a way to just do that, you know, like how like, let's say me, like I used to just like find ways of like sneaking out horny books from the library. Like kids are just going to find a way to get online, because getting online is so easy. Like you'll have a mate who's got a phone and you'll see something fucking radical.
Yeah, but I think the problem is like awareness of it. Like I think we live in such a different age of parenting now as well. Like we live in like gentle parenting times, and like every person who I've known that has had a boy who like obviously they're young, like they're all under 3 at the moment, but that's going to be in the forefront of their minds when they're raising that kid, and they're going to be like hyper aware of these things. And obviously I can't say it because it happens so much with mums and boys where they just can't believe that they do bad things and stuff like that. But I do think we're changing, like parenting is changing so much to be child conscious. Like I think
of like the adult they're going to be.
Yeah, my mum was like a really good mum, I'd say, but like she didn't really care what I was doing if I was out and about. Like she didn't, like, do you know what I mean? Like she wasn't monitoring my every move or hyper aware of what I was getting up to. She was just like, I guess I had a certain amount of freedom to make the choices I wanted to. And I don't think that would be the case for as our generation raise kids. And I think there's pros and there's cons to that.
Yeah, it's just such a difficult thing. Like even imagining like having to raise a kid.
Oh, well, yeah. Famously difficult.
Fucking crazy. And I think
not to be Chapel Roan. Did you see all the shit she's getting into?
Don't. But like, but then that's the thing. Like, someone without kids will be like, that looks fucking hard. That's crazy. I would never do that. And then parents are like, up in arms, like, how dare you? Like, it's the best thing that ever happened to me. And then a piece of media release being like, it's fucking rough, isn't it? Guys, like, all the parents like chiming in. They're going, yeah, it's the worst thing that I've ever done. It's the hardest thing. It's just like, can we all just even ground? Like it's rough. Like I wouldn't want to do it. We have to respect people who choose not to do it.
Yeah, and respect people that choose to do it, exactly. Even though it's hard. Exactly. But I think there'll be, and also I feel like this is such a thing that it happened, but it was rarer when we were kids, of like, you know, like having cool parents that you could like talk to about stuff and like blah, 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 blah. I feel like my mom was not that person. I feel like that's only going to increase like as our generation starts parenting up. Like people are going to have these conversations with them younger. So like even if school, obviously the show also is trying to make the point that it has to be like a multi-pronged approach in schools, parenting, in mental health services. And I mean, I'd say it says the least about the law than anything of the other themes it says.
Well, one of the reactions to this has been saying like we shouldn't, like it should be in the law that you can't have a smartphone till you're 16.
Well, yeah, of course, that's stupid because, like, what we were all lying on the internet about our age. Like, people will just lie on the internet about their age.
No, but, like, even, like, you wouldn't be able to own one.
Well, no, exactly, but as in people will find a way, yeah, that's...
Yeah, it's like the same reason why they haven't banned cigs yet, because it was just, like, making them illegal just mean that people are just having them illegally.
I think it's really hard to legislate these type of things because they're ideological, and the only way you can kind of make societal changes through education, but I also don't think that like mass hysteria around it is going to help, because as we've seen with the reaction to Adolescence, it's emboldening the right and emboldening like Andrew Tate and all of these people more, and that will isolate boys that are maybe going down that path, because it's like setting a binary view of masculinity as much as anything else. And I was reading Reddit last night.
Yeah.
to try and like sense the vibe of everyone watching it, and it just made me think that like toxic masculinity is going to be the new like woke, basically. Like it's going to start being, well, it already is that, yeah, but there's like Mark Zuckerberg's already done it, being like, we need more masculine energy in the workplace.
When sorry to talk over.
No, it's fine.
I was thinking this when I was seeing Russell Brand saying like, oh yeah, I went to a Diddy party and it wasn't even that bad. I was like, I'm sorry, but again, people used to have shame, like when when like all the stuff come out about Kevin Spacey, he literally had to go into hiding for years, but now like it's turned into such like a defense thing. There's like a bolder class thing where you can just be like, it's fake news, and it's kind of like addressed at the end of the...
No, I don't even think it's the fake news thing. I saw a quote tweet about the Russell Brand tweet being like, I don't think it's the only thing it is to say you were bored at like one of the most heinous, deplorable parties in the world.
But I think that he's got an audience that will agree with him.
Yeah,
and I think like before that audience didn't exist, or it was so underground, whereas now that audience has become the mainstream.
Yeah.
Which is horrible and awful and shouldn't. I think like the only way to battle it is to deplatform it, like push it back.
And I do think it makes a good point of like the show, even though I didn't enjoy it on many levels, including a show that was entertaining as entertainment, or a show about education, or a British show. And I love British shows.
Famously, you love British shows.
But I do think one of the points that, and it made it too swiftly because of the format of the show, that was when the main policeman gets the talk from his son about what all the emojis mean.
Yeah.
And then he's like going and telling the teacher, and he's like to the teacher like, oh, it's because of Andrew Tate and all that shit or whatever. And she's like, oh, I've heard of him. Like, I don't know how true that, and I think also it's the age thing. Like the teacher in the show is probably in her 60s, and we know that like teachers are more likely to be like our age, like 30 to 50 or whatever.
Yeah, we just seen 10 of them this morning.
What do you mean?
Sorry, that's such a segue. When we walk into work this morning.
That's true, yeah, we did. So I do think that teachers are probably more culturally in tuned than the show made out. And I think, yeah, that we're going to age out of basically this like mass lack of awareness. But that still doesn't mean that it doesn't need to be built into the curriculum. Like it should be compulsory that if you're going to sense something weird's going on, like people's lack of curiosity is really astounding to me. Like if suddenly all your boys who are like 10 are talking about like porn and like sexually harassing women, I'd maybe go home and read about it.
Well, yeah, but I also think like teachers are having a fucking shit time of it at the minute.
No, it's true. And it's not on them either to like solve the problem.
No, it should be curriculum based, and it should be like built into the programming. And I think it reminds me, actually, you saying that, of when we did our episode about slurs, and they were like, when it was like when they were getting rid of the R word being like spoken, when they did a very specific campaign for like 20 years, it worked, being like, this word's wrong, this is why, please sign this letter that you won't use it, and it literally like knocked it out of like 20 years of kids. And then when they changed to a broader model of teaching against things, that it kind of
teaching like right and wrong,
teaching right and wrong, it like went back, like that's how the slip-ups happened. And I think that's what needs to happen with this. Like it needs to be so specific, and I think that's why I think people need to watch Adolescence and then go away and learn about it.
But then I also think because
it would have been so much better if it just told you.
Well, for example, and it's not too it is too little too late, because now we're in the grips of it on like a mass scale, like, or a really big scale of like boys being treated like this. And I think it shows how out of touch like our government is, and Keir Starmer being like, oh, it's going to be added to the curriculum. Kids don't need to watch that. Like if you watched that when you were 13, you would laugh, because you'd be like, look at all these things it's gotten wrong. It is for adults, like Tom Usher said. Like this should have been something that was like platformed 3 years ago or longer, 5 years ago, 10, like whatever, because that's how also a TV show takes like 3 to 5 years to make. Yeah. So it's not as if this is like brand new, something that's just come out of nowhere. Like it is a watershed moment, but only because like our, like policymakers and British culture as a large is like so slow to catch on to anything that's happening.
Definitely. And I think that's kind of like the timing of the production of this TV show is also something that keeps being brought up for against the alt-right as well.
What do you mean?
Because they're all trying to be like, oh, it's obviously like based on the Southport attack.
Yeah, which is it happened too.
It was already in production.
Soon.
It was already filming when that happened.
Well, I'm sure people will have thoughts.
Yeah, I think I'm really interested in what everyone else is thinking of this, because I feel like everyone that I've seen online is like trying to have like, yes, this is amazing, or B, this is really bad. And I think that it's kind of like in the middle. Like, I just don't think we're the target audience for it. Yeah. And it also is one of those ones where it's like, the sooner people accept what the target audience is and apply that to themselves, the people who need to, like the parents of that age and the like people who look after kids, the better.
I do think though as well, like the parents aren't moving through the world like with wool over their eyes. Like from what I know of parenting, everyone's scared all the time as to what's going on in their kid's life.
Well, I think that's hopefully how most parents are operating, yeah.
Anyway, let's wrap this up. Thank you, Rob, for the research and Charlotte for the sound tech.
Thank you, Ione.
Thank you, Gina, for the co-hosting and for staying up till 2 a.m. watching Adolescence.
I know, it's my fault for going to the pub though.
And thank you to Olivia for editing.
And thank you for listening.
Or watching.
And reviewing.
No, watching though.
And reviewing.
And becoming a member so you can watch.
Please watch. I accidentally picked my notes halfway through. So did
you actually? Yeah. Oh.
Cut that out.
Yeah, put a heart around it.
Put an emoji.
Okay, bye.
Bye.